Hey, FlimsyLunchTray here, and welcome to World of Warships, where today we're going to be talking about the Tier 9 Russian destroyer, the Tashkent, and doing an upgrade and commander build on the ship. So, let's get right into it, shall we? So, first we're going to briefly discuss her modules. She does have a lot of options when it comes to the upgrading of modules, the guns, the hull, torpedoes, and your main battery. Upgrading them to the 130 millimeter 55 on a BTU mount brings you to a 4.4 second reload, and you can kind of see that the difference there is not only just the main guns themselves, but also your AA defense gets a nice bonus, which is helpful. And then for the hull, you go to hull B. You get up to 24,950 hit points with having the survivability expert on your commander. And you can see without you lose 5,100, 19,850. Whenever you're upgrading your ship, let's just say you got the Tashkent and you're beginning your grind. I always recommend going for the hull first, mainly because of the survivability. You can see you go, adding that 5,100 hit point pull on is super important and keeps you in the battle in the game much longer, since you are a sizable destroyer, to the extent that you're a light cruiser. Torpedoes, you get a slight buff in the reload time. You also see you get the maximum damage goes up to 15,100. And then speed also goes up to 60 knots, which is welcome at that 8-kilometer range. Main battery, this is maybe this is the second thing you want to go for. It depends. But that will get you up to from 11.5 to 12.7, which is really helpful because with your speed when you're moving at long distance, it's harder for ships to hit you when you're open water gunboating them, as an example. And then your engine is 42.5 knots without engine boost or a Sierra mic flag mounted. Talking about the consumables, you got the damage control party. As I discussed in yesterday's video, where I highlight the build that I have on here, I talked a little bit about the smoke generator and repair party. When I take smoke generator, I find myself trying to play Tashkent more as a hybrid destroyer. I'm not so much focusing on our guns. But when I take the repair party, I feel like I'm more embracing the Russian DD gunboat line kind of play style. And I've gotten Dreadnought multiple times with this having the repair party. So I would recommend trying repair party out. Take a risk and just kind of test something new out if you're really used to taking smoke generator. You might find you like the repair party more than smoke generator. That was the case for me. And then you get your engine boost plus 8%. Upgrade rise, you get a couple options. I'm going to recommend going with the main armaments modification 1 because it reduces the risk of your main battery and your torpedoes from becoming incapacitated by negative 20%. Your main battery survivability and torpedo tube survivability goes up by plus 50%. Your main battery repair time and your torpedo tube repair time, if those armaments should be knocked out, is reduced by negative 20%. So, very helpful. You don't have a secondary battery on Tashkent, so the only buff you're getting is the AA, and this really isn't an AA destroyer. And then risk of your ship's magazine detonating, negative 70%. If you're new to World of Warships, you can simply take this signal here. It's a combat signal, the Juliet Charlie. There's no risk, no danger of explosion, so it completely eliminates the risk of your ship's magazine detonating. So you just mount that, and you don't have to worry about it. So your main armaments is what you want to keep in action. For slot 2, go for engine room protection. The risk of your engine from becoming incapacitated and your steering gears from becoming incapacitated is reduced by negative 20%. Engine repair time, steering gears repair time, if those two should be knocked out, is also reduced by negative 20%. Keeping your engine and your rudder in the game is really important, that you don't get it knocked out and have to wait and you're just going in circles or something like that. But reducing that risk in the repair time if they do get knocked out, because at some point they're going to get knocked out, is really helpful. At the same time, you also have engine boost modification 1. What this does is it increases the action time of the engine boost and emergency engine power consumables plus 30%. Right now we have a consumable action time of 120 seconds. So if I do the math real quick, if I get my phone on and calculator, you'd be adding 36 seconds on. So 120 plus 36, you're 156 seconds. So you could go with that if you want your engine boost to last longer. There's sometimes I've kind of thought about wanting it to have higher. But if you do this option, you have to spend coal. But if you do use a coupon, and I'll just show you what that looks like real quick. You click on it, it's going to take you into the armory where you have these customization upgrades. And with coupon, you can see it's 12,750. So tells you the same things there. For slot 3, I've taken the aiming systems modification 1. What this does is it tightens your shell dispersion of your main battery. Your torpedo tube traverse speed also gets increased by 20%. And then there's secondary battery buffs, but again, you don't have a secondary battery on the Tashkent. You also have AA guns modification 1, priority AA sector preparation time, think of 20%. Again, you're not really an AA destroyer. If you want to play AA, I'd recommend taking a different tier 9 destroyer. Then you have main battery modification 2, the main battery traverse speed plus 15%. So your main battery traverse speed is actually, it's a little rough. It's 10.3 seconds, but it's not terrible. I find it tolerable, so then I don't feel like I really need to take this. You also have torpedo tubes modification 1, torpedo speed plus 5, and then torpedo tube traverse speed plus 20, and risk of torpedo tubes from becoming incapacitated, negative 40%. And if you're not doing smoke, you're doing the repair party, then this is kind of pointless to take. And even when you do take the smoke, as an example, the action time is 20 seconds, and it's only up for 93 seconds. So I still feel the repair party is the best. And having tighter shell dispersion when you're trying to shoot targets at longer range comes in real handy, and you're more likely to make those shots count when you're fighting with destroyers up close and personal. For slot 4, you have damage control system modification 2. This is really more you take maybe on battleships, cruisers. What I like to take is the propulsion modification, time taken to reach full engine power when accelerating, negative 50%. This is in general what I prefer. Now it can be very debatable between taking propulsion modification and the steering gears modification 1. Honestly, I really feel it's up to you as the player, because your rudder shift time is 6.1 seconds. It definitely gets worse as you get up to the Khabarovsk, the tier 10 Russian destroyer that's currently in the tech tree line. That's going to be moved to armory, and another Russian destroyer is going to take the Khabarovsk place. So if you took this, you'd get your rudder shift down under 6 seconds. Myself, I just always enjoy the propulsion. You know, if I'm have the engine boost going and I'm open gunboating, sometimes I like to slow down, dodge some shots, speed up, avoid some incoming fire, like from battleship, let's say longer range at 12, 11 kilometers. So it helps me avoid more of the fire, those incoming shots. So I feel like I take less damage when taking propulsion modification. Also, you get to accelerate out of the way faster. Let's say if there's some torpedoes coming in on you. But same argument can be made with steering gears is, let's say there's some torpedoes coming at you and you need to maneuver to avoid them or find the window, find the gap between torpedoes. Then this is going to come in handy here. So it's really up to you, but I just tend to go for propulsion modification because of the open gunboat shooting style. Slot 5, you have concealment systems modification 1, which is what I've taken. Now keep in mind I don't have the concealment expert mounted on the commander. I moved my commander to my Khabarovsk. I should have just left him on because I'm going to grind Tashkent again to get the tier 10 Russian destroyer when it hits the Delny when they move the Khabarovsk over. And so right now concealment is at 8.5 with not taking that, because on my Khabarovsk commander, we'll just switch over there real quick. You get a quick glimpse of the build. I actually run the concealment expert. So that's just my personal opinion in taking this and reducing your detectability range. It also, the dispersion of shells fired by enemies attacking your ship is increased by plus 5%. So that's also nice to have there. So you could argue for this, or you could argue for the steering gears modification 2. What this does is that reduces your rotor shift time by negative 40%, and steering gear repair time negative 80%. So if you take the rotor shift time of negative 40% and then you hop back over here, or not here, where is it at? Here, sorry, it's the 4th and 5th slot. Rotor shift time negative 20%. So you can stack those on top of one another, and you're getting your steering gear rotor shift time down by quite a decent amount. I can try to give you a number of what that would be. So let's say we took 20% off. So you're actually going to get under 5 seconds with that. So 6.1 minus 5, minus 1.22. Make sure that was the correct math. Yeah, 6.1 minus 1.22. So 4.88 second rudder shift, and then taking this times that by 40, 1.95. So 4.88 minus 1.95. Then you're under a 2.93 second rudder shift time. So to me, I would be curious to try this out at some point in my gaming experience. I do know there are other people who run the steering gears. My reason for why I take, one of the reasons why I take Concealment Systems Modification and Concealment Expert on the Commander is the torpedo range, which is 8 kilometers. So that means I can actually stealth torp. So if I don't take concealment, then it means I can't stealth torpedo. So like in yesterday's battle, you saw that I got some torpedoes off as a surprise on that enemy Shimakaze in the cap. I'm not sure if I would have been able to do that if you would have known I was there. Or if you're kiting away, you had that small gap window. Because at full concealment, you should be at 7.4, I believe it is. 7.6, yeah, and then we got to take camouflage. Been throwing these around. And then we'll go back to the commander. Yeah, 7.4. So you get a 0.6 kilometer gap for your torpedoes. So, and what's nice, and another reason why, I was going to talk a little bit more about it in a minute, but I'll talk about it now, is your torpedo armament. You get speed of 60 knots, it's 8 kilometers. But when we look at the reload time, is 69 seconds. So you can actually make really good use out of these torpedoes because you get 3x3, so you get 9 torpedoes. So you can actually make pretty good use again out of those. So often when I'm fighting and I dump torpedoes and next time I think about torpedoes, often they're almost reloaded or they already are reloaded, especially if there's a enemy pushing into you. Your torpedoes keep coming up quite frequently. So that's actually really nice. So another reason why I take the Concealment Expert, just to get a little more usage to me out of the torpedoes, maybe more so than the guns, and sacrificing the maneuverability of the rudder shift. But again, that's up to you. You can try out both, but this is what I found has worked best for me thus far. 6th slot, I'm going for damage per minute, the main battery modification 3 upgrade. Your main battery reload time, negative 12%. So that gets us right down to 4.4 seconds at the moment. At the expense of your main battery traverse speed is negatively impacted. So it takes a little bit longer for your guns to turn. But as you saw, it wasn't terrible, 10.3. But you also have Torpedo Tubes Modification 2. This would buff your reload time by negative 15%. So I said it took 69 seconds for torpedoes to reload. This shade's just over 10.3 seconds off. So 69. Pop torpedoes back up. 69 minus 10.35. So then you have under a minute reload. You're at 58.65, and you can make the torpedoes reload even faster with an upgrade commander build. So that'll be one of the options I'll highlight. But so that is a possibility. But since you're more of an open gunboat destroyer, a gunboat DD, you're going to get fired at a lot, and so there is a pretty good risk of your torpedo tubes becoming incapacitated, just because of how they're laid out on the ship. So here, here, and here. And most people are focusing on shooting, let's say, like this area, more aiming towards the midsection of your ship. So you'll notice your torpedoes get knocked out quite frequently. Not terrible, but you'll just notice that it happens. And so that is, another reason why of taking the main armaments modification 1. You also have auxiliary armaments modification 2. This improves the secondary battery and AA mounts. Again, you don't have a secondary battery on the Tashkent. Almost only a couple of destroyers actually have a secondary battery on them. And then you get an AA buff, but again, I don't really feel like this is an AADD. You have 54, just other tier 9 destroyers that play the AA role better. So that's the upgrade. So let's go ahead and dive into the commander. As I said, I have this commander right now that I originally had Tashkent on my Khabarovsk. So there's a little glimpse there to some of the things that I have. But we're going to roll back over to this guy, and we'll show you what I would recommend as a 10-point commander build. And again, that's usually the bread and butter build, is what I do, at least. You could give up Concealment Expert, and we'll talk about what you could give that up for in exchange if you really want to just throw Concealment out the window as a build option. But this is my main recommendation, but I recognize there's other differences out there. So with preventive maintenance, the risk of your modules from becoming incapacitated is reduced by -30%. So again, that's helping keep your torpedoes, your main turrets, steering gears, and engine from becoming incapacitated. Last stand is a must. The ship remains partially able to sustain speed and maneuverability with the engine and steering gears incapacitated. If you don't take this, you're dead in the water sitting still. If your engine gets knocked out, or if your rudder gets knocked out, then you're just going in whatever position you had your rudder. So that could be you're going straight, or it could be you're just making circles. So you really want last stand. And again, survivability, you want to buff that as much as possible on a destroyer. So that gets us up to that 24,950. Must take that. Concealment is more optional, up to you. But I like to run it just so I can do a little bit of stealth torpedo with that 0.64 kilometer window, or 0.6 kilometer window, since your concealment now would be at 7.4. It also reduces your detectability by range. So that's nice, to 3.2, because sometimes you don't want to engage enemy aircraft carrier player, so I will be turning my AA off often when there's a CV battle, and only turning it on when I need to. And you can see there's a little bit of buff there to the periscope depth and operating depth of submarines detectability. So it's good. Concealment Expert's always pretty nice to have. After this, I'd recommend going for Adrenaline Rush. So this enhances the ship's parameters for each 1% of HP lost. So as you lose health, your main battery is going to reload faster, your torpedoes are going to reload faster, your AA damage gets a buff. It goes up by plus 0.2%. That's really nice, especially since you are more open gunboat destroyer. Having your guns fire even faster to get past that or less than the 4.4 second reload time is quite good. As you may saw on the Khabarovsk, I take the main battery in AA Specialist. So this reduces your main battery reload time by -5%, and then continuous AA damage gets a buff of plus 10%. I mainly take this for the main battery, but I mean, when you are able to have that simultaneous buff with the AA, it's nice. So this would be 13 point, this would be 16 point commander. So now our main battery reload time is 4.2 seconds. So that means this puts us at a 10, 13, 16 point commander right now. And then what my intentions are when I grind the Tashkent commander up even more. This is going to be the same build I run on my Khabarovsk with, speaking of the commander, that is taking the main battery in AA Expert. So your main battery firing range is plus 20, and damage from AA shell explosions plus 15%. So I should probably show you what the AA looks like. Continuous damage plus 14 to 153, so it's not a lot, to be honest. It's more of a lower number. You take this, and you can see there's a jump in the number there to damage by shell explosions to get you to that 1,852. What this does is the main reason for taking this is it extends your main battery firing range by plus 20%. So now we can fire 15.2 kilometers away, where before we are at 12.7. So that is nice if you're embracing more of that open gunboating style. So, I mean, there's nothing to me more frustrating as a battleship player or cruiser player when I have a Tashkent firing at me from 13, 14 and up to that 15 kilometers away. Because when you fire at them, you know, let's say you got a 30-second reload time, you're in a battleship, and you miss, it really hurts because then you're waiting for another 30 seconds for your main battery reload again. And if you fire at them again, you might have a bad chance of not being able to hit them. So I've come across, there's one particular Tashkent commander who was really good at the open gunboating. He was slowing down, he was speeding up. I think he had the propulsion modifications, but he definitely had this skill mounted, the main battery and AA expert. And there was nothing I could do. And I was in the Azuma. It's a tier 9 Japanese cruiser. Couldn't do much about it. I got a few hits here and there, but it was nothing that was actually really notable damage, and we lost that battle just because there are more destroyers alive. But you can be real tear to battleships and cruisers. You know, when you're getting out to that 14, 15 kilometer, usually you're harassing more the larger cruisers or large battleships because you have a much better chance of hitting them, and you make battleship players very unhappy with you when you take this skill. So that's a 20-point commander. Then for a 21-point commander, I'd recommend taking incoming fire alert. Warning about a salvo fired at your ship from a distance of more than 4.5 kilometers. So let's say you're focusing a battleship at, you know, you're zoomed in 14, 15 kilometers away, and all of a sudden you get the little incoming fire alert. It just says, it'll say detected, then I'll switch to like incoming, red with the exclamation point. That's what this is. Then you know to get out of that zoomed view and see who else is firing at you. And it's only 1 point, so it's pretty beneficial. So this is what I would recommend in general to take for a 21-point commander on the Tashkent with the build of the upgrades that we have on the ship. So now, what are some other builds you can do? Well, as I mentioned, we talked about the 4th and 5th slot. You could give up the propulsion modification, do steering gears modification 1, get that negative 20% rudder shift time, and then give up the concealment system modification 1, take the steering gears modification 2, negative 40% off your rudder shift time, and then you get under that 3-second rudder shift time on your maneuverability. So you could take that, and then you could play with that in the sense of, let's say you did this, and then you don't take Concealment Expert, and you could do something like the Fearless Brawler. This is a can-be activated skill. What this does is it reduces the main battery reload time after your ship has been detected by negative 10%. So when we look at the artillery, we got down to 4.2 seconds when we take that. So 4.2 minus 0.42, you're then down to a 3.78 second reload time on your main battery. So that's really good, getting under 4 seconds. Not to mention that if, as you lose health, your adrenaline rush is going to kick in, so you could be looking at a 3.5 second reload time. Even without taking it, like the build like I showed, you're getting underneath the 4 second benchmark, but more of a probability you're going to get under that 3.5 second reload time, or even lower depending on how much health you've lost. If you give up concealment and go for the Fearless Brawler, it just might mean, with your detectability range at C8.2, you won't be able to stealth torpedo any enemy battleships or cruisers, as an example. But if they're coming into you, you could still technically stealth torpedo. So that's really up to you as a player. If you feel like, hey, I want Fearless Brawler, or no, I'd like to get maybe a little more out of your torpedoes, then you could do this. Because the Russian destroyer line is more of a more of a gun line really you want to be investing more into the gun skills. So that's why I primarily recommend, I'd recommend this, or I would recommend this, and then maybe then take the rudder shift as an example, or you could not take the rudder shift upgrades and keep what I have. So these two are, I'd say, were really close in opinion, but I like the ability to be having to stealth torpedo in taking concealment experts. Now, there could be a case made where, I don't know, maybe you would call it more of a meme build if you invested more to the torpedoes. So let's say you took torpedo tubes modification 2. That means you're not going to have the 4.4 second reload main battery time right now. But you took this because you want to get to that, how did we say that was? 69 times 0.15. 58.65 second reload time on your torpedoes, not taking into account also adrenaline rush. So you could fill the tubes. So now, see, you'd be at a 58.65 seconds, then you take 10% off. As I got to do this correct on my phone. Let's see, times 0.10. Yeah, so you take 5.86 seconds off. So 58.65 minus 5.86. Then you're at a 52.79 second reload time. Being able to take this, and then let's say you want to be more of a torpedo build meme, increase your torpedo speed up to 63 knots from that 60 knots, and then that would be a torpedo build on the Tashkent. So then at this point you're going more, maybe a little bit more towards the hybrid build per se, but you'd be having 9 torpedoes less than every 53 seconds. So I don't know of too many players that take this build. I guess I've never actually talked to someone who took this build, but it would be something different to try out, just as an option to share with you all. Beyond that, would I have any general recommendations on something else to take? If you took Superintendent, you'd have a 4th heal. As it is right now, you only have 3 heals. Also, in addition to the engine boost. I have a harder time suggesting this. The repair is nice, but at the same time, you're investing 3 points into this, and then you're like, okay, now I have 2 points left. What am I really going for? So I have a hard time suggesting the Superintendent, but maybe you're a player who really wants that 4th heal. If you did Superintendent, and I would probably just say priority target detection indicator shows how many enemy ships are targeting your ship, aiming at your ship with their main battery. So you could do that, but I don't recommend it, but it's a possibility. So again, just highlighting the build. The first build, this would be my number 1 recommendation build. And then number 2 recommendation would be this. Then keep in mind you could keep the upgrades the same with the concealment and the propulsion, or you could give those 2 up, take the rudder shift upgrades, or you could go with a bit more of a torpedo build as such. So I don't take some of the other skills as I try to highlight that. The 10 seconds for your main battery I feel like is alright. Chances of causing flooding, you're not really an all-out torpedo ship. I mean, you get to tier 9, you could say, oh, take Yugumo, hey, tier 9, take Shimakaze at tier 10. Gun feeder, you're a destroyer if your guns reload pretty fast. We've talked about incoming fire alert, we've talked about preventive maintenance. It used to be called Power Technician, I think. It's called Demolition Expert. Chances of causing fire, your artillery right now, main battery, chances of causing fire, 8%, Then you take some flags, you can buff that. Combat signals, you can get it up to 9%. I don't think it's worth it for the 2 points because of the other builds I've shown you. We've talked about Swift Fish. This is only, Consumables enhancements is only helping your engine boost, so really not getting anything out of it. Main battery AP, shell damage plus 7.5%. Depth charge damage plus 10%. You have really good AP with the Tashkent. You can see maximum damage 2600. So if I click on that, does that go 2795? Again, have a hard time buying into that because of just the build, other builds I've shown you. We talked about priority target. We've talked about this guy, this guy, this guy. IFHE, you don't cross any important thresholds with your 130mm battery. You need to have 6-inch guns or higher to be able to get really more of a use out of the IFHE to pin battleships and cruisers that typically have that standard armor. Let's say the 32mm. I think that's the word that gets used a lot. Might have to correct me. Talked about Superintendent. We've talked about main battery AA Expert. Swift and Silence, nah. I mean, yeah, you could get a lot more speed out of your Tashkent because with engine boost activated and then having a CR mic flag gives you more speed. And then this, but you're open gun boating. You don't want to be silent. You want the guns firing. So this would be more on a torpedo build like Destroyer, something like the Shimakaze as an example. Radio location. Radio location is helpful because most other destroyers are going to out-detect you. One of the things with Tashkent, as we discussed yesterday in the pros and cons, it's much more difficult for you in the Tashkent to contest important zones, let's say capture points, because most other enemy destroyers are going to outspot you while they're still hidden. And then you're like, well, if you have an RPF, then you know exactly more of an idea of where they are at. But I think you're kind of fighting a little bit more against what the Tashkent is, I would say, maybe to a certain extent, because you're investing 4 points into that and you've given up that. So then maybe you would do that if you wanted RPF that bad. But I don't see it, me personally, but there may be some of you, those who already take this and you really like it. I run RPF on my Marceau commander, but I haven't felt the need to run it on my Tashkent thus far, just because I really like the build that I have going so far, which would be this. That's why. This is how I was playing Tashkent in yesterday's video, as I haven't had enough points to get these two guys yet. Fearless Brawler, we talked about this skill. Concealment Expert talked about. Dazzle, not really worth it. It's only a can be activated skill. Little White Mouse reviewed this skill and was firing on an enemy destroyer that had the skill Dazzle mounted and then also not mounted on the captain, and really couldn't notice that much of a difference, if I'm being honest. So I would just recommend avoiding Dazzle. To me, it's not worth it, where you can get much more. You know that you're going to get your 4 points worth out of these skills versus a can be activated skill. So yeah, so that was a recommendation. So I hope you liked today's video. Trying to do a good job at keeping these videos. I like to try to keep them underneath 30 minutes, so I'm sorry I went a little bit over that. But I want to be able to talk with you because I feel like Tashkent, she's a fun destroyer that there's different ways to play around with her, and I want to highlight some different builds with you. So if you liked today's video, give it a thumbs up. If you did not, give it a thumbs down. Subscribe if you do want to see more. If you are subscribed, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. So until next time, take care.